So if you have your phone, you can scroll there, John chapter 7, find it in your paper Bible. We'll have it on the screen as well. Verse 1, 1 through 9. And we're going to be in a story where Jesus has a conversation with his brothers. And when I say brothers, it's interesting. My son and I were talking on the way to church this morning, and he asked, he said, Dad, what are you talking about at church? I said, well, a conversation between Jesus and his brothers. And he goes, oh, like his disciples? And I said, no, his actual brothers. And he said, wait, Jesus had brothers? It wasn't just him? I said, no, bud, like after they had Jesus, his mom and dad, they had other kids. And for our parents in the room, I know what you're thinking. Hey, if you had the first one and it was perfect, I mean, you're kind of like, if you're in the room and you're the second child, it's because the first one wasn't perfect. So if you're the second child, way to go. That's horrible. I'm going to get in so much trouble for that. That was a joke. My goodness, don't take that with you. So I'm talking with Silas. I'm like, no, he had brothers. And it's interesting because we're going to find that even his brothers, Jesus, even his brothers didn't actually believe in him after he's fed thousands of people with some crackers and sardines, and he's walked on water. Even still, because the conversation we're going to be in is about 6 months after Jesus walks on water. He's having a conversation with his brothers, and they still are at the place where they don't quite believe in him, and they're going to kind of prompt him and almost challenge him and ask him to do something that he's not going to do, because Jesus is going to do things the Jesus way, not the way they wanted to. And we're going to look at an instance here that all of us have familiarity with on some level, and it's this, and I'll ask this question, and you have to be honest because you're in church. Has God ever done things on a timeline that you did not prefer? Yeah, right? Next question. Has God ever frustrated you when he did not move at your pace and do things? Has God ever done things in a way that you wish he hadn't have done them? Great. All right, so about 80% of us have decided to be honest today in church. That's good. The other 20% will catch up to the conversation, I'm sure. But we're going to find something in John 7, and it's really fascinating because it's a conversation between him and his brothers that if you're a Bible reader, and of course, as we go through John for the rest of the year, I would encourage you to read through it over and over, get familiar with the text. And as you read it, maybe if you're a Bible reader, you can read verses 1 through 9 in John 7 and kind of treat it like I checked a box, so I got through that chapter today. But there's some stuff that happens here that I think is going to help us learn what to do when God does not operate at the pace we want in the way we want. So, verse 1, John 7, it says this. After this, Jesus went about in Galilee. Remember, we're looking at about 6 months after he walks on water. He would not go about in Judea. When it says go about or went about, it just means be there and ministering to people. And he wouldn't go about in Judea because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now, this is John chapter 7. It's not until later in John that we get to what is commonly referred to as the Easter story. And that's where this, conspired group of people were plotting to kill Jesus. That kind of comes to fruition and it materializes. But it's important to note that way before that ever happens, you have a group of religious leaders and certain people who are involved who were already conspiring to kill Jesus, not just because he was doing things maybe the wrong way, healing people on a holy day, but it was also the words he was saying, that he was claiming equality with God. And of course, John puts in here the entire reason he records these miracles is so that people would believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So Jesus is very much aware that people were conspiring to kill him. And so verse 2, now the Jews' feast of booths was at hand, and we'll come back to that. So his brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works you are doing. Notice they don't say that we may see, it's so that your disciples. So at this point, Jesus' own brothers did not believe in him. And I wonder if some of that is a little bit of, sibling rivalry. We don't think about that with Jesus, but I mean, man, I got a brother. I know some of us in here have siblings. Parents, we know. Siblings, you know. Something happens, something breaks. You're kind of like, we're pretty sure we know who it was. Imagine being one of Jesus' brothers. Something breaks. Well, we know who's not getting blamed. I mean, you're in it at that point. So there's an interesting dynamic, but they're telling him, go so that your disciples may see the works you're doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world, for not even his brothers believed in him. In verse 6, Jesus said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time's always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I'm not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come. And after saying this, he remained in Galilee. So here's what's going on. You've got his brothers having a conversation. Jesus is performing these miracles, these signs as John calls them, and people are starting to see, but he's doing them in maybe some smaller towns like Galilee. And so his brothers are essentially telling him, hey, you need to go do this where everybody's going to be so that everybody can see this. And it's almost their way of saying, because if more people see it and believe, okay, maybe we might start to take you seriously and start to believe too. And it's interesting because it's a phenomenon that happens often that we forget. If you're a Christian, we talk about this all the time. Your faith is a personal relationship with God, but a personal relationship with God that's never meant to be lived privately and never publicly. Your faith is meant to be on display. And in fact, we tend to undervalue the testimony of simply living a faithful life to God. And imagine these brothers, they're kind of looking for a sign too, and they've seen some signs. They're looking for somebody else to have some stronger faith, so maybe that'll help them. I had a conversation in between services. Someone came up to me and said, this stuck out to me when you said this. I have been consistently doing this thing for the last 6 or 7 years, and a little while ago, I started thinking, maybe I need to stop with this. I don't know that it's actually accomplishing anything. And that thing that this person was doing was simply just being a light every day. Not anything overt necessarily, but just putting their faith on display. And they said they had someone approach them not long ago and say, hey, I want you to know, I'm not a Christian, but what you do blesses me. And it encouraged this person to say, hey, never underestimate what God can do if you just live out your faith. Your faith might actually impact someone else's faith. And they might not be walking with Jesus yet, but your faith on display might be one of the things God uses to draw them to himself. And so you've got Jesus here with a conversation, and they're saying, go to Judea because there's more people in Judea. It's a bigger city, right? And there's a big festival going on, this feast of booths, as we read of, that's going on. And there's already some controversy here by way of where Jesus is doing his ministry. And when I say controversy, meaning for people who are wanting him to be popularized because they're seeing what he can do. In this instance, his brothers wanting him to be popularized because maybe there would be an associative connection that would bring their status up, but also maybe help them, exercise stronger faith. Because at this point in time, you've got people from Judea and other maybe more prominent cities around the Sea of Galilee and in that region who looked down on people from Galilee as maybe not being as cultured or maybe even as educated or as higher up in the Jewish status symbols of what they would mark a higher member of society as. And so people in Galilee tended to were tended to be looked down on by other people in different cities just because of where they're from. And you and I understand this on some level. And I'll give you a funny one that we do, and maybe you do it. If you're from Southern California, San Diego specifically, if someone from Northern California were to invite you to visit them and they offer to take you to go get some tacos, you're going to look down on them because Northern California Mexican food, not the same. For our friends watching online, I love you. I love you dearly. is not the same. We kind of do that jokingly, right? But that's essentially what's going on, because Galilee wasn't as big of a city, but about a year's worth of miracles that Jesus performs in the Gospels are in Galilee. It's actually one of the reasons why the religious leaders at the time would discredit Jesus and his claim as Messiah. They not only would plot to kill him, they would try to disparage him, and they would try to discredit his actual lordship as this Christ, this Messiah, because the religious leaders said, well, he's not performing these miracles in front of the right audience. He's doing it in that little town of Galilee. If he would come here and play in the majors, then maybe people could start to take him seriously. We see that all the time. There's pundits on ESPN and other sports radio and sportscast shows where what happens? Every draft season, they're arguing over whether or not this college graduate is going to be able to take their all-American level of play and apply it in the pros, because great, you did it there, but can you do it here? And they argue about it, and they spend time doing it, and we watch this, and everybody wonders. People buy these sports collectible trading cards of a rookie card of somebody because they're wondering and they're hoping that this person will be able to play at the pro level just like they have here, and there's all that stuff. And so we can kind of understand, because if you're in this part of the world at this time, some of them are thinking, okay, Jesus, you've been doing these miracles, but you've been doing the miracles in the minor leagues. It's time for you to do the miracles in the major leagues. And if you do the miracles in the major leagues, maybe we will believe you. And so they're kind of teeing that up. And the religious leaders would use the fact that Jesus is not performing these miracles in front of what they would call the right audience to discredit him. And so his brothers here take an opportunity to say, there is a big festival going on. Go start, hey, walk on water in front of all those people. Take a Happy Meal and go feed all of those people. Go do it here, because the Festival of Booths was going on. And for context, it's like the Super Bowl was in town. If you ever, visit a town where the Super Bowl's being held on Super Bowl weekend, good luck getting a hotel room. It's just not going to happen. Why? Because everybody's in town for that event. And so the Jewish people at this time would have a handful of festivals that they would celebrate every year. And they do that to commemorate the things that God had done. The Jewish people at this time were absolutely brilliant, and it challenges all of us in setting up systems that would allow them to consistently commemorate and memorialize and celebrate everything God did for them. I think this is a really neat lesson, because for all of us, God does things in our lives, and life gets busy, we get busy, we move on with life, and what do? We kind of forget what God did back here, and so we just worry about what God's not doing right now. But maybe if we were to do things in our lives that help us, memorialize the thing that God did back here, it would help us maybe exercise greater faith. Well, the Jewish people did that, and this particular festival happened in the fall, kind of September, October time, and it was called the Festival of Tabernacles, or Feast of Booths. Because you read Feast of Booths right here, and you're probably thinking, if you're like me, you're thinking of like a booth at the fair. You know what I'm talking about? Like the San Diego Fair, and you go, and you're gonna go to the booth that has the cheeseburger that's also on a donut. Because you either exercise a lot or you don't care. It's usually one of the two camps. It's usually not a middle ground for somebody who's gonna eat a Krispy Kreme cheeseburger. It's either somebody who runs marathons or somebody who's like, you know what? We're all gonna die one day anyway. I might as well enjoy it. But that's what I think of when I think of a booth. But that's not what the word booth means here. What the word booth means is like tents. Because the celebration here, Feast of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles, depending on your translation, is to memorialize God bringing his people through the wilderness in the Exodus, in the Old Testament of your Bible, out of Egyptian slavery. And as they would camp in the wilderness, God would provide. So here's what happens. These people who lived maybe in rural areas, we would say it out in the country, they would set up tents. And for 7 days, that's the length of this festival, they would live in these tents. And then people who lived in the city, they would set up tents like in the front yard or the backyard, and they would live in them for the week. Have you ever done that? Like, did anybody grow up maybe and you went camping in the backyard for fun? Okay, I'll ask this even further. Does anybody like to camp? Any campers in the room? Great, you're all about to get really mad at what I say. We got invited camping a few years back, and I don't like to camp. I own one piece of camping equipment. It's a water bottle. That's what I own. I don't like to camp. I like to camp at the Holiday Inn. That's a great place to camp. I love that. And camping's expensive. You gotta buy certain types of coolers and tents and sleeping bags and stuff. And for me, no offense, I love you, and I'm glad you have a thing that you love to do. For me, camping seems like a very expensive way to pretend you're homeless, and I just don't really want to do that. Again, I love you, and I'm glad you love it. We got invited by friends. We love them. We're still friends. We went camping with them. The four of us shove ourselves in a tent, and about halfway through the middle of the night, we just hear this shh, 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 scratching on the tent, and we saw this shadowy figure that was quite larger than a squirrel. And we obviously survived, but I made the decision then at 2 o'clock in the morning at Nowheresville in this tent. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So the idea of camping is a little much, but if you can picture, that's what's going on here, is these people are memorializing and commemorating God's provision for them in the wilderness when they would set up tents, and they wandered for 40 years, but God saw them through it to where they wanted to go. So what you have going on here is Jesus performing miracles in a smaller town. Now there's a festival, everybody's in town for it, and not only is everybody in town for it, word is spreading because it's 6 months after you walked on water. And word is starting to spread. So not only are there going to be a lot of people in town, but on your way to town, everybody's posted up in these tents. Word's going to spread. People are going to see it, and somebody might run ahead and tell people this Jesus is coming. And so they're playing to that, and they tell Jesus, look, why don't you go do this in front of everybody? And the word they use when it says openly, it's this Greek word. I'll phonetically spell it out as parrhesia. This Greek word openly means uninhibited, out there, no holding back, in full view for everyone to see. That's why our translation says openly. Here's what's fascinating about this word. For us Americans, this will resonate with us. This would translate into what you and I would know as freedom of speech. That word is where we get this concept from. What it meant was to be able to do something or say something without any fear of any type of persecution, that it is just out there. You can do this. So Jesus has this conversation with his brothers, and they're like, look, you're feeding people, you're healing people, you're walking on water. Go do this in front of everybody. Stop playing in the minor leagues and do it in the major leagues. And Jesus says, it's not my time. It's not my time. And I can imagine that's frustrating, and I think it's frustrating for us sometimes too. We ask God for things, which is good. But also we ask God for things the way we want them. We ask God to do things in the time frame that we would like them to do. And we almost treat it as like an Amazon order. Anybody pray like you're ordering something from Amazon? I'll admit sometimes I have done this. And what are you doing? Okay, God, here's the thing I really need. I really need this thing, and okay, I don't want the free shipping option. I'd like the expedited shipping option. And I'll pay extra. Look, I'll pray more. I'll pray more. God, I'll go to church more. I'll read my Bible more. If you can give me this at this time. But God's not an Amazon delivery driver. And so sometimes what? He doesn't show up when we are asking him to show up in the way we're asking him to show up. Why? Not because he doesn't love us, but maybe because God knows better. Maybe some of us have been through that before, where God did not do something in our time frame, and now that we have 20/20 vision and can look back on it, we can see, oh wow, God, thank you for not doing what I asked here, because that would have not gone well. Maybe my character wasn't ready for what I was asking. Oh, maybe this relationship that I wanted, wow, you were actually sparing me from something I couldn't see. Oh, God, okay, you were teaching me this here. And so Jesus knows he has a mission. He's not deviating from the mission. He just says it's not time yet. And we forget that God knows best, don't we? It's easy to do that because we want to control the outcome in everything we do. And sometimes we think, okay, God, I'm not hearing from you. God, you're not moving at the pace I want you to move. God, you're not doing this in the way I want you to do this. Is it because you're punishing me? I would ask this. Is it possible that God's not punishing you, but God's preparing you? Because oftentimes when God does not operate at the pace we want or in the way we want, it's to prepare us for something he has. So what do we do with this? How do we lace up our shoes with this unique conversation? Jesus, go do this, go do this. Go do this in view of everybody so that maybe we can start to believe. God, go do this, God, in the way that I want you to. God, do this for me so that my faith can grow in you. God, if you do this, I'll be all in. God, if you do this for me, I'll start leaning in and jumping into what you're doing through your church and through personal relationships and all sorts of stuff. God, if you do this for me, and you're like, God, but do this my way. God, if you do this my way, and we're filling out comment cards and dropping them in the comments box on the way out. Yeah, well, my steak was a little underdone. God, I'd like you to do that better the next time. We do that with God, don't we? And it's normal. You don't have to feel beat up about that. You know why we do that? Because we think we can control the outcome in everything. But the reality is we bring two things to every situation, attitude and effort. But God takes care of the results. Hard to put feet to your faith in a lot of situations, especially when God does not operate on your timeline or do things the way we want. So you know what we do? Here's the first thing that most of us tend to do when God does not operate the way we want or on our timeline. We worry. Anybody else have the spiritual gift of worry? You're really good at it. You know why we worry? We want to control the outcome. We want to control the outcome. But does worry ever give you anything? You know, we say this all the time, right? Worry is like jealousy. It doesn't give you anything, but it'll take a lot from you. Worry never adds. It only subtracts because you spend time worrying and not doing other things. And I think there's three things that everybody can do in different seasons or situations when God is not operating in the time frame or in the way we want. And the first thing I think that we can do is this. We can work. It's a simple thing, but oftentimes we are asking God to do something for us and he's not doing it as fast as we want him to, or he's doing it faster than we want him to. And we come face to face with things in front of us that God has given us to work on. But what do? Instead of getting to work on them, we do what? We worry. We worry because God, no, that was too fast or that's too slow. And we want the porridge to be just right, God, and it's not just right. And so we're gonna worry. Can I give you a grammatically incorrect phrase for your faith? When God does not operate at the pace or in the way you want him to, work, don't worry, because worry don't work. Worry is not a benevolent trait. It's not a benevolent practice. It only takes. Maybe God's not doing things the way you want him to. He's not doing things at the time or the speed that you want him to, because there's something in your life right now that you need to be working on. Oftentimes people miss opportunities God has given them now because they're so worried about what God's gonna do next. Don't miss what God has for you right now because you're worried too much about what God has next. The second thing we can do is this, and you're gonna love this. Wait. Does anybody like to wait? Yeah, of course. That's like the audible no's. Nobody likes to wait. You know why? Patience is tough. Has anyone ever prayed for patience? Yeah. Okay. Keep your hand up if you prayed for patience a second time. Yeah. You're like, no, didn't like that. You know why? Because God probably gave you opportunities to exercise some patience. And you're like, I'm not gonna ask for that next time. It's tough, right? It's kind of a dangerous prayer. We don't like waiting. There's a reason why no one gets happy in the waiting rooms. And I'm gonna say this too. Oh my goodness gracious. If you were born 2000 and on, you're not allowed to complain about the waiting room ever again. You know why? You have a phone. You know what those of us born in the 1900s had in waiting rooms? Highlights. Google it. It's a magazine. Word searches that other people did, and you're just trying to erase them. Nobody likes to wait. Waiting is tough. You can get drive-through food delivered to your house. That's how much we hate waiting in society. It's tough, but God puts us in situations where he's teaching and training us. But do you know what I think happens? And this is why I think God, one of the reasons he puts us in situations to wait, you know why? I think one of the best things that happens in us when God makes us wait is he grows our prayer life. Because prayer is where you go to rely on God. And when you wait, you are given opportunities to trust God more. Waiting rooms are where you build your trust muscles. And waiting rooms are never arbitrary. God, hear this, God never wastes the waiting room. He's using that to teach you to trust him more. And maybe in this season of waiting, what he's doing is he's growing your reliance on him. He's building your trust muscles because you're having to keep asking while you wait. The third thing is this, that everybody can do when God does not operate on our timeline or in the way we want, is to worship. You ever heard the song, Whistle While You Work? Hey, there you go. You know why you do that? It's the same reason you listen to an audiobook or music when you exercise, when you're running. You're trying to make the time go by, aren't you? You see that, maybe you work with somebody, they sit in their office or maybe in their cubicle, their station, and they put headphones in and they're listening to podcasts and they're listening to stuff like that. You know why? They're trying to make the day go by quicker. And so you whistle while you work. It's to give yourself, it's a psychological thing. It's to give your mind something to do that takes your mind off of the thing you're supposed to be doing. And so the thing that you don't want to do that you're supposed to be doing doesn't feel as difficult because your mind's being entertained over here. And so you're just kind of muscle memory doing this thing over here. Here's what I think the lesson is for the Christian. When God makes you wait, when God doesn't operate the way you want or in the time frame you want, you can always worship in that season. It is an exercise through which we remember, like these Jewish people setting up these tents in their front yards and their backyards and in their country living, to remember who God is and what he's done. Because when you worship God, you're thanking God for who he is and what he's done. You are remembering what he has done. And the more you thank God for what he has done, the more you learn to trust God for what he can do. And so worship is this incredible exercise that everyone can do in seasons where God is not moving at the pace you want him to move or doing things the way you want him to do. But our default is typically to worry, and God gives us opportunity to work on what's in front of us. How can we grow? What opportunities to bless God's church have we been given? What opportunities to be a light of this gospel work in our lives have we been given? What is God teaching us? You know, one of the best questions you can ask when God doesn't do things the way you want in the time frame that you want is not, God, why are you doing this? But God, what are you teaching me through this? And these waiting rooms are opportunity to grow our trust muscles as we pray and seek and rely on God. And in all situations, we can be thanking God, because even when God makes us wait, he's still God. Even when God does things his way, not ours, he's still God. And the more we thank God for who he is and what he has done, the more we learn to trust him for what he can do and how much he loves us. The lesson here, as Jesus has this conversation with his brothers who have told him, go put this on display. And he says, listen, I'm going to put everything on display. I'm going to save the world. And that's the plan. That part of the plan, y'all aren't ready for yet. Could it be that God operates his way and on his time because he knows better than we do? I have a friend, he tells me, Scott, you're looking at the clock. God's looking at the calendar. I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, clock only goes by hours, right? Calendar goes by days, months, years. You can only see so much when you look at the clock. You can see a lot more when you look at the calendar. Could it be we're looking at the clock, God's looking at the calendar? So trust when he's not moving at the pace you want or the way you want. God is not wasting those seasons in your life. He's teaching you to trust him in all those seasons. Get to work, learn to wait, always worship. Let's pray, and then Dylan will come wrap up with some announcements. God, thank you again for your word. I pray that it is the primary thing on display in this conversation. God, that everything that we have learned, we wouldn't leave, we would take with us. Jesus, thank you for the work that you do in us. God, thank you even when it is downright frustrating, for working on us, in us, and through us. That God, maybe for some of us, we would feel the comfort of knowing that you're working on us because we matter to you. So thank you for that, God. I pray that you are honored by everything that we say, that we sing, that we learn, and we celebrate, because it is all from you, it is all for you. And I pray that what we learn here today doesn't get left here, but we take it with us. It's in your name we pray. Amen.